Hi, and welcome to PowerViews. I'm Dan McDade, your host and president of PointClear. On PowerViews, I have the pleasure and the privilege to talk to some interesting and knowledgeable experts who offer solutions to some of today's toughest marketing and sales challenges. My guest today is Lori Richardson, the founder and CEO of Score More Sales. Lori is a thought leader on the B2B sales growth front and works with technology brands worldwide. She began her career in sales for companies like Apple, IBM, HP, and Siemens. Lori rose through the ranks from retail to corporate accounts and then from an individual contributor to a sales leader. Lori, welcome to PowerViews.
Hey, Dan. How are you? It's great to be here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we were just talking that you're in Portsmouth. And so how's the weather up there today?
It's a hot one.
Is it really?
not totally acclimated to the humidity yet, but I'm sure it'll happen.
Well, I'm going from Atlanta to Baltimore on Thursday, and it's supposed to go from like the low 80s to the low 90s and be very humid. So I can empathize.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get into some of the specific questions, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, please.
Before we get into some of the specific questions, I wondered if you might just talk for a moment about what you see as some of the primary challenges in sales and marketing in 2013. Are they the same as in the past, or are they different this year?
Well, it's a great question. I think when you've been in sales for a long time, you see a lot of similar things happen over time. And so I would answer it that, yes, there are a lot of the same things happening. People not hitting their quotas and, lots of different issues. But there are also other challenges, which is that there's more noise out there. It's harder to get your message across. It's harder to, build your brand and keep showing value to your prospective customers and your customers. What do you think?
I think we are dealing with some of the same issues we've been dealing with for years. It's just that companies have found a less expensive, faster way of delivering poorer quality leads to sales than ever before.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's really true.
Yeah, I have an expression that not every senior executive wants to be treated like the human equivalent of a pinball, only getting your attention when they've hit the right bumpers and scored enough points. And I'm afraid right now a lot of companies are buying volume and quantity over quality, and that has a cascading effect down into the sales force. Particularly in big companies, I see this more so even than smaller companies.
Yeah, I agree.
I know that from what I've read that you're less focused on a singular methodology and process when you're working with your salespeople and sales teams. What's your reasoning behind that?
Yeah, instead of going in the marketplace having one solution, one methodology, one way to be successful, I've run into so many different companies that have found interesting solutions that I couldn't really find flaw in. And so rather than saying, what you're doing is good, but you really need my methodology, I just decided a while back to work with what people are using if it generally is moving them forward, and then help them tweak their results and help make improvements in some very basic things that I think a lot of salespeople overlook, and a lot of sales leaders and company leaders are overlooking as well. And somehow it's worked really well for me. I tend to find really good companies that want to be greater, and people that if you had 10 deals and you closed 7, you want to know what happened to those other 3. And so if, to help dissect things and find small improvements. My motto is to make a 1% improvement every day, rather than, oh, Dan, I have something for you that's going to improve 180 degrees in what you're doing. I'd rather make the small gains over time and compound it, just like compound interest. It makes a massive, profound impact.
Can you give a couple of examples of some of the things that you feel like sales leaders could train their salespeople on that would make a difference, start getting that 1% improvement?
Yeah, a number of years back, it used to be a real bad thing to talk about soft skills because there were no hard dollars associated to it now. But it's even more apparent today because you see people who are so focused on a process that they don't have communication skills down. they don't show enthusiasm, for example. I'm waving my hands here. You can't see it. But, people are not making eye contact. I don't know if you saw that in I think it was the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. There was an article about how people are, compared to a number of years ago, we're not making eye contact with people, and so we're not going to build trust when we have face-to-face meetings or web-based video like we have today. And that's a huge impact on the results for growing revenues and building pipeline. It's not focused on metrics, and I love metrics. I love CRM tools and all sorts of sales tools that help measure things, but there's some basic issues in terms of what we're saying to people, how we're saying it, and those things need to be addressed.
Yeah, one of my favorite little jokes is that Georgia Tech is pretty close to us, and they talk about, how could you tell a Georgia Tech graduate who's going to go into sales, and it's the one that's looking at your shoelaces instead of their own. So
yeah.
It's not a lot of eye contact.
Yeah.
What are, as you know, being in the industry, we get a lot thrown at us every day, and it's very hard to keep up. How do you recommend that sales managers and sales representatives, kind of filter through the noise, and what should they be focused on?
Well, it's something I'm always asking people in leadership roles in case I might pick up a tip or two as well. I think it's incredibly hard, and just like there's a science to things and an art to things, you need to find a system that works. I like to look at the beginning of the week and declare what my goals are from a revenue standpoint, activity standpoint, and then at the end of the week do the same thing. And if a salesperson can say to themselves on Friday, what did I do that's contributed to revenues for this company? What am I putting in place that's helping? If they don't come up with a very long list or enough activity to justify the 5 days they've been working, they need to really tackle that closer. And so, the whole concept of focus and how to focus better, how to do things in chunks of time rather than what we often do is research call, research email. That's incredibly wasteful of time, and you lose every time you're interrupted. You have to lose focus and then go back to what you were doing, and that time is huge that you don't need to do at all.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you kind of a couple off-the-wall questions probably. One of the frustrations sitting in my seat, which is as a provider of opportunities or leads to technology clients and other types of businesses, that sales reps seem to be kind of conditioned to expect poor quality leads, and as a result they're not as really tenacious at following up on the leads as they might be. Do you find that's the case with your clients, or not necessarily with your clients, but with prospects that you run into?
Follow-up, we could talk for 20 minutes just about that. It is, I don't know why people don't follow up. I did a webinar for a company today, a private webinar today, and the whole focus was about the power of follow-up and the importance and how in our minds, I don't know if you're this way, but sometimes I'll even think, I've called Dan a number of times, not you, but he didn't get back to me, he must not be interested. And
yeah.
Even when we are in this business, it's so easy for your mind to trick you that just following some basic rules that if I have something of value to offer you, and I believe in my heart that it's a great value, and I think that your company fits the profile, it is upon me to follow up and reach you to the point that you can say, whoa, wait a minute, I do understand, and we really are not interested. I can't just go by you not following up and just assuming that you're not interested. And for some reason it's rampant as today as it was in past years. Have you found a change in that?
No, unfortunately I haven't, and my favorite example of this is that on the 42nd touch we reached the CFO of the fourth largest utility and turned over a lead that closed 5 months later for $1 billion, and people still said, well, 42 touches was too many. Well, in that case, 42 touches was exactly the right number of touches. And, I find that, as a matter of fact, there's an article that's going to be published in Chief Marketer magazine not too long, talks about the optimum number of touches that it takes to create a lead, and then the optimum number of touches, or the necessary number of touches that it takes to follow up on a lead. Our good friends, I'm sure you know Trish and Matt at the Bridge Group, but they talked about how 80+% of sales reps said they followed up on every lead they got, but follow-up could have been either one phone call or one email, and not much more.
Exactly.
And so it's a huge problem. One of the things that I'd be interested in your take on this. One of the things that I recommend is that if marketing turns a lead over and there's been an agreement about lead definition, that if the sales rep either doesn't follow up on the lead or follows up on the lead and feels that it wasn't qualified, then it goes, instead of just going back to the source, it goes to what I refer to as a legislative branch that's made up of people from multiple areas in the company. And you obviously wouldn't want to operate like that forever, but for a relatively short period of time, maybe 6 to 9 months, that there's no lead left behind. If a lead is going back from sales for whatever reason, there's a reason for that. And if a lead is not progressing in the sales process, then there's a legislative branch looking at that as well. And until you kind of get through all of the problems that companies are suffering from today, with lack of lead follow-up, leads going into lead purgatory, no effective ability. My favorite example is one of the largest software companies in the world generated 9,000 leads last year out of marketing, and sales said they got 0 leads. Well, we went in and did an audit, and 1.28% of the so-called leads were actually with qualified companies. The other almost 99% were, basically a total waste of time. Well, here you've got marketing spending valuable money generating leads that sales will never touch. I mean, and this is one of the biggest companies in the world. So, what's going on in other companies that are a little bit more sophisticated? So at least that's what I find.
Yeah, absolutely. The definition of what is a lead, I mean, that's a discussion in itself. And if it's just somebody that went to your website and maybe signed up for your newsletter, that's not a lead. But some people interpret it, especially marketers. I've had those discussions with people before, and I agree with you. I think that there should be a place where if marketing does have a process, they do feel they went through it, they do feel they have a qualified lead, they send it to sales, and sales doesn't like it, let's get somebody else to take a look, find out what the situation is, and learn from that, and then put that in place, and maybe you don't need that small team anymore. But I think that's an excellent idea.
And the other thing you mentioned, just as an example, the number of leads closing, the average company, and this is according to some Serious Decisions data, but the average company closes about 20% of sales qualified leads, and the best-in-class companies close about 29%. I think the other problem is sales reps basically don't want to sign up for losing 4 out of 5 times, or even 3 out of 4 times, and as a result, they don't provide any kind of visibility into the sales process, and that's a killer to companies when perhaps they should be rewarding a 20% close rate, as opposed to basically forcing the sales rep to kind of hide or operate, in obscurity, because otherwise they're afraid that they'll spend all day, every day answering questions from executives simply because they said, well, there was something going on that they were working on.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that hide their leads.
It
happens every day.
Yeah, and not necessarily just sandbagging from quarter to quarter or year to year.
No. And different policies in different companies. One company has more of an open territory situation, and so of course I'm going to hide my leads until I know that there's a solid opportunity for me. But it doesn't help the process. Why invest in an expensive, comprehensive CRM tool that has been customized and does a lot of things if in fact it's not reflecting the true data? Yeah, that's an ongoing issue.
I think we talked about soft skills just a couple of minutes ago, and I know you've got a little bit of a different take on the value of creativity as a part of the sales process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Did you play an instrument when you were young?
I did.
No. What did you play?
Well, I played the saxophone, and I played drums and guitar.
Oh, and do you play now?
No, I don't. I gave it up.
There you go. I'm the same way. I played the concert marimba, if you can believe that. It's like a xylophone. Mm-hmm. And I was in the marching band. I played the bells, the ding, 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 ding. And don't play any of that anymore. And those were real creative outlets for us as kids. You grow up and get responsibilities, and I was a young single parent, and all of a sudden you're focusing on making the numbers and growing business, and we tend to feel, at least I felt, that I lost all my creativity. But then little glimmers of it would surface in sales, and I realized over time, it's been a good lengthy career for me now, is that there's so much creativity and opportunities to be creative in sales. And just ask a rep that says, I have this opportunity, I've tried everything and nothing works. I can't move it forward. So, you ask them, really, well, what did you try? And they tell you that they tried 2 things. You say, well, let's write them down, all of them, and you get to 2 or 3 things. And you understand that there are, literally half a dozen things that maybe could have been done. And I just like people to consider being open-minded and thinking about the most elegant solution isn't always the first one. A lot of times it's the second or third or fourth thing that we come up with. So we don't have to have a quick answer necessarily. But we need to think, if I could just shift it. It's just like you could shift the words that you say when you talk to someone on the phone. We can choose any words in the whole world, yet we choose the same ones over and over in many cases when we're talking to prospects or when we're leaving a voicemail. And, just to consider the idea of mixing it up a little bit or finding more powerful words to use, more descriptive, or tying into that company's message in different ways. And that's a huge opportunity for gains.
If you were in the position of being VP of sales in a company, or I guess maybe I should ask it a different way. When I talk to VPs of sales, one of the things I do is I say, no matter what your quota is, when you assess what you've got in the pipeline and in the forecast, you have to communicate, because there's no sense in communicating that you're going to make a number that you'll never make. Or you at least have to communicate and say, here's how I view things, and here are the things that I think I need to do to get from point A to point B. Be communicating all along, because what happens is when company executives get surprised, it's the worst possible thing. Is that something that you feel like you deal with on a daily basis, or not?
Yeah, and I think that setting expectations in any aspect of a sales career, whether it's sales leadership or as an individual contributor, is so important, because if I can set the expectations up front, we shouldn't have any surprises. For example, the idea that you would be surprised if you worked for me and I told you, tomorrow's your last day. No one should have that happen. No one should be surprised in that way. If it's not clear, painfully clear, and yet it happens, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
When it comes to setting expectations with numbers and goals, extremely important that people are not caught off guard. You don't want to. Careers are ruined that way. I mean, there's no doubt.
That's why I started my own company, because I was tired of having that happen to me. So I was the golden child, for like 35 years, and all of a sudden I got fired twice, and I thought, the heck with this, I got to start my own company, so at least I can't fire myself,
Writing on the wall, yeah.
Anything that you can think of we haven't covered that you think the audience might enjoy hearing about? Anything that you're working on or writing, or anything else that you'd like to talk about today?
I just want to put in one more point about when we're talking about communication, and the ability to think on your feet is something that I would love for sales leaders to encourage their sales team to think about. And there are organizations, I don't know if you've ever been a part of Toastmasters, or if you've heard of Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm, sure.
That's an organization that's very inexpensive, and you actually learn to speak extemporaneously, so that after doing it for a number of years, I'm not in it now, but throw a topic out there, and people should be able to say something. This is what happens in sales all the time, is that someone throws a curveball, we put our foot in our mouth and blow an opportunity. So I think that's really important. I wanted to say that. But I'm working on a book, and I am working with an incredible group of women called Sales Shebang. They're about 50 women sales and marketing experts, and we get together once a year, and just having a good time, helping companies grow revenue. So I love comments on the blog too. I would say that if anyone is so moved, we all we put a lot of work into these blogs, and it's great to get feedback from people. So that's always welcome.
Absolutely. I don't know if you know Paul McGuire, who's up in your area. He's an old sales guy, but he still attends, to the best of my knowledge, Toastmasters every week, and he'll even attend when he's traveling. And I think of him as one of the best speakers I've ever heard. So we pay for our employees to go if they so choose, but unfortunately, not everybody wants to take their lunch break and do that. So
yeah, I know it's a commitment like anything else,
What's the best way for our audience to get a hold of you or to learn more about your company, Lori?
Well, I'd love for anyone to visit our website, which is scoremoresales.com. I'm on Twitter at scoremoresales. Just Google Score More Sales in quotes, and you'll probably find us somewhere on Google Plus. Love to connect with anyone, whatever works for them. LinkedIn is another great place.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks again for being with us today. I really enjoyed the conversation. And for now, this is Dan McDade signing off from another edition of PowerViews. Thank you for watching.